All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. If you've been to one of my previous webinars, this is going to be just like that one. I am having horrible allergies thanks to all the rain we've gotten this spring and all the blooms we now have. So apologies in advance if I temporarily pause today's presentation so I can blow my nose or have a coughing fit. But without that, we'll go ahead and get started. As you go through today, if you have any questions, use the question and answer interface in Zoom there to send those questions into me. And depending on what the question is, I'll either answer it as we go or I will answer it at the end. Today's webinar is our monthly new partner introduction. The idea behind this is to give you a little bit of background on who Zyxel is, some of the benefits of the partner program that you've probably joined if you're on today's webinar, as well as to give you sort of a high-level overview of some of our most popular product lines that we have here at Zyxel. If you see something in here you're interested in, chances are we have more in-depth presentations at other points, either during this month or in one of the coming months. So I'll go ahead and get us started. We'll start first with a little bit of background on who Zyxel is. I know here in North America, we are not a household name. So we've been making computer networking equipment since 1989. So over 30 years of experience here making computer networking equipment. We have deployed over 100 million devices out in the field. We are a global company. We serve 150 different global markets. Here in the US, our primary business is selling products to large ISPs, nationwide ISPs. We provide them a lot of their CPE devices. We may also provide them some of their infrastructure equipment. Today's webinar is focused on our channel VAR MSP type products, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. Our corporate headquarters is in Taiwan. That was where we were founded and got our start. Our US office is based out of Anaheim, California. So that covers Canada and the United States. That's where our sales team is located. It's where our warehouse is located. Our marketing team is located, and it's where our tech support is located. So when you call in to get support, you are calling into our Anaheim office and you are dealing with Zyxel employees. For those of you on the East Coast who may call in a little bit too early for us out here in Anaheim, California, your call may get redirected to our German office, and they will provide some of that early morning support, but otherwise you're dealing with Zyxel employees here at Anaheim, California. So you're here most likely because you recently joined our partner program. So that's a program that we have here for authorized resellers to give you some extra benefits. Obviously, you get access to things like this webinar we're doing right now. We have a pre-sale support that you can get help with. We have post-sale support where you get priority when you call in for support. We have the ability to do deal registrations. And as a partner, you automatically get discounts through all of our distribution partners. So the US is broken up into 3 different regions here for you. We have the Western region, which is headed up by Andy. We have the Central region there in purple, which is headed up by Jacob. And then David handles our Eastern region. So when it comes to our channel products today, we've got a lot of different products here for you. Security appliances, wireless solutions, switches, network management. We also have some consumer products. So we're going to be talking about everything that's on here except for the consumer products. We're going to be avoiding those today. So we're going to start off with talking about our management platform known as Nebula. We're starting off here because this is a solution that touches all of our key product lines. This is something that can be used with our access points. It can be used with our switches and with our security gateways. So the idea behind Nebula is to provide a cloud managed solution for you to easily manage all of your devices. It's something that we launched all the way back in 2016, and we've constantly been improving it ever since. It's designed to help get you and your networks up and running in just a few minutes. It provides a very simplified interface for being able to go in and start setting things up. And we have a number of tools in there, depending on the level of Nebula you're using, to make it easier for you to get things going. We've got some standard default settings that will get things up and running. We've got some tools to help you clone or copy settings from existing customers or sites that you may have running, etc. Now, one of the cool features here with Nebula is the ability here to start setting up your customer's network before you even unbox your equipment, and in some cases before you even decide which equipment you're going to use. At any point, you can access the Nebula interface and start setting up a new customer and a new site and many of the settings that apply to it. Once you get the hardware in hand, you simply scan the QR code that can be found on the outside of the box or the belly label of the product, and it gives you the ability there to automatically assign those to the site that this device is going to. And you can continue doing all of your setup like that before you even power on the device. And then once the device finally gets to where it's going to be going and it has power and an internet connection, it'll automatically download the latest firmware and update the settings to those which you've assigned to it. So in order to use Nebula, all you need is Nebula compatible hardware and an internet connection. There's nothing else you need to buy. There is no additional hardware you need. There's no cloud keys. There's no software or virtual machines you need to run. Nothing like that. You simply go to nebula.zyxel.com. All of your devices, all of your customers are there. So then you've got access to your customers anywhere you have access to the internet. All configuration changes and all firmware updates are done over the air through that web interface. There's no need to go on site. There's no need to VPN into your customer's location to be able to do any of these things. It's all done over the air for you. Nebula was designed from the ground up to allow you to manage multiple customers and multiple sites under those customers and easily be able to move equipment between customers or between sites. So the core functionality here of Nebula is free. It does not cost anything extra. There are no limits to the number of devices you can manage in Nebula. There is no limit to the number of customers you can manage in Nebula. And the core Nebula features there give you access to all the core features of the equipment itself. We do offer some licenses which unlock additional features, primarily aimed at things like additional logs being stored, additional admin accounts, troubleshooting tools, things like that. So if you're interested in Nebula, the term you want to look for here is called Nebula Flex. So when we first launched Nebula, we kind of copied the Meraki way where we had one line of products for the cloud, one line of products not for the cloud. Eventually here, we've pretty much gotten rid of that and are now providing our Nebula Flex. So that means basically we've got one set of devices that can be used with Nebula or it can be used the traditional way for management. And you simply switch between modes. Switching a device between modes is really easy. You simply log into the Nebula interface, add it to Nebula. It will automatically convert itself over to Nebula management. Pull it out of the Nebula cloud. It'll automatically switch back to standalone management for you. So just look for any device that says Nebula Flex. You will see some products are labeled as Nebula Flex Pro. So what Nebula Flex Pro does is it includes the optional Nebula Flex, or excuse me, Nebula Pro license, which unlocks additional features primarily aimed at MSPs. And that comes bundled with generally with 1 year with it. So if you see Nebula Flex Pro, you do have that bundled Pro Pack license included. In the case of our access points, the access points, also the Nebula Flex Pro products, are those products which can also be managed by a local controller. So if you're looking to do a local controller for wireless LAN management, you want to look at our Nebula Flex Pro access points. So now we'll move on from that and start talking a little bit about our security product lines. So this is where our firewall and UTM products are included here. So our products here have now been certified by ICSA Labs for 20 years. So ICSA is an independent lab. These set up minimum requirements for firewalls and security devices, and they perform independent testing to make sure those devices are in compliance and are functioning the way they should. We also do something a little bit different than most of our competition in this space. So most competitors, when they provide UTM services, they also are trying to provide those signatures and functionality of those UTM services. So UTM services are things like, content filtering, gateway-based antivirus, intrusion detection and prevention, things like that. So rather than try to do that all in-house, we've partnered with a number of providers in this space for them to provide those signatures and that functionality. So we've partnered with companies like McAfee, Lastline, WebRoot, Trend Micro, Bitdefender to provide those features for us. So now as we go through our security products, we'll just talk here in general about some of the features you can expect to find in most of our security products. So we have the ability to set up link aggregation groups where you can increase your bandwidth by combining ports together. We have high availability pro. So for those, mission critical firewall deployments here, you have the ability to basically install two of our security appliances and they remain in sync. So if one of them should fail for any reason, the other one can immediately take over for you. We have the ability to do SSL deep packet inspection. So just because a website or link is SSL encrypted doesn't mean that we can't protect you from threats that might be on that site or location. We integrate in with your Radius or Active Directory for providing user-based rules. We have high availability also on our VPN side of things. We have the ability to do load balancing across multiple WANs. And then on the VPN side of things, we have the ability here to do a SSL-based software solution for providing a lightweight VPN connection back to the office. We also support L2TP over IPsec, which works with a number of built-in VPN clients in Windows and other devices. We have an easy VPN functionality that makes it really easy to set up VPNs and manage them. And then on the UTM side of things, depending on which device you're looking at, we offer antivirus at the gateway, content filtering functionality, the ability to provide rules based on layer 7. So basically application-based rules. So we're able to recognize different applications and be able to apply traffic shaping, blocking, things like that based on those applications. And in some cases, the individual functions within those applications. A geo enforcer to make sure your employees aren't accessing websites that maybe they shouldn't be doing. Our ATP series offers sandbox and machine learning. We provide intrusion detection, reputation filters, etc. In addition to all of those, I'm called mostly standard UTM services, most of our security gateways also include an integrated Wi-Fi controller, which can manage our Nebula Flex Pro access points at the controller level. And we have the ability to basically turn that gateway into a hotspot gateway for providing guest access, whether it's for vendors visiting your customer or whether it's more of a hospitality type situation, such as a hotel, coffee shop, thing like that, where you may want to provide the public with access. Another feature we have here is we are certified to work both with Amazon's cloud services and Microsoft's cloud services, where you basically are able to create a virtual cloud for your users. So basically what this does is it creates a VPN tunnel to the Amazon cloud or Microsoft cloud where your applications may be hosted and allows the local network users to be able to access those applications as if they were hosted there on the local network. So we've got three primary lines of our security gateways these days. We have the VPN series, the USG Flex series, and the ATP series. So the VPN series was focused primarily on, as the name sounds, being a firewall with VPN functionality. They generally can support a large number of VPN clients, but they don't offer the UTM services, just the basics of content filtering. The USG Flex series is our traditional UTM series, so firewall, VPN, and the core set of UTM functionality. And then we have the ATP series, Advanced Threat Protection. So these are our next generation access points that have the ability to use sandboxing and IP and DNS reputation filters to be able to help block like zero-day exploits. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Now, having said all of that, as we move forward, eventually what's going to happen here is the ATP series and the VPN series are going to go away. And everything is going to be in the USG Flex series. So we will be able to provide the same sort of functionality as the ATP series or the VPN series by using different licenses. So we'll eventually have one set of hardware that you can standardize on that does a little bit of everything. So we'll talk briefly here about the ATP series. So the way conventional UTM works, right, is you've got a number of signatures. These are usually provided by the manufacturer of the UTM device. In our case, it's provided by our security partners that we team up with. And they provide signatures that help your firewall determine, hey, is this packets that we're seeing? Is this behavior that we're seeing? Is this something that we should expect and know is good, or is this something that's bad? It's a known threat. It's a port scanner. It's a malicious website. It's some other form of attack or maliciousness for you. Now, the downside of the traditional way of doing UTM is there's always new types of traffic, new types of applications coming online on the network. So you get basically a gap between when something new hits the network and when your security company is able to discover this new application, classify the new application, create new signature files, and then push them out to the devices. So those are like your zero-day exploits and things like that. And so these are things which traditional UTM are unable to handle. So the solution to it using our ATP series is something we call sandboxing, and it takes advantage of machine learning or artificial intelligence, or whichever term you prefer for it. And basically what it does is it works very similar to your traditional UTM. Your security device has these signatures to recognize traffic. Where it changes though is when there's something new that happens that isn't part of those signatures. And basically you can set this up and it works with the cloud. And it basically allows us to capture whatever's going on, this new file that was trying to pass through the firewall, some new behavior we are seeing. And it's able to send that up to the cloud where artificial intelligence is able to basically simulate different types of computers, different types of networks, and find out what this new behavior, what this new type of traffic, whether it's good or bad, identify that, and then is able to push it out to all of the ATP devices that are out there. So basically, it allows you much quicker response time from when there's a new threat introduced on the network or out on the internet, and when your firewall is going to be able to recognize it and take advantage of it, as well as being able to recognize good, proper new applications that are taking place on the network that should be allowed through your firewall device. So in addition to that, we have something here called Secu Reporter. Comes bundled with some of our appliances. Some of them, it's something that must be purchased additionally. But this is our reporting and monitoring platform, making it easy for you to keep an eye on your network. It works with devices being used standalone. It also works with devices being managed with Nebula. And it generates a number of reports for you so you can see what's going on your customers' networks. So one of the challenges we often run into, right, when it comes to UTM services is these require an annual subscription, which means every year you've got to be going back out to your customer and getting them to renew those licenses for you. And because it's, something that's happening on the firewall, it's providing the content filtering, it's providing antivirus intrusion detection prevention, your customers aren't really seeing what the benefits are because they're not seeing everything you're blocking. So Secure Reporter is a great tool to generate reports, not just for you, but for your customers. So you can show them, look at all these threats we've blocked, look at all these things we've protected you from, look at all these things we've found by using these UTM services to help your network. So basically the reports are basically designed to show you, what type of threat it was, who was it on your network that was targeted, when did it take place, where did the attack come from, etc. It allows you to help identify particular users on your customers' networks who maybe are keep doing things they shouldn't do. Maybe they're going out to certain types of sites they shouldn't be that are, at risk of hosting malware. Maybe they're trying to run pirated software, things like that. We can help you identify those. Who are those users that are threatening your customers' networks? And just like Nebula, it's been designed specifically to make it easy for you to keep an eye on different customers that you have in their different networks. So there's reports that I've been talking about. These reports can automatically be generated and sent out either to yourself or to your customers. And if you're sending them out to your customers, we can include your branding on those reports. So that's it for security here. I'm going to move on now to our switches. Switches are probably one of our more confusing lines of products just because we've got so many different series of switches. So I'm going to try to give you some rules here. So when you're looking at our website or going through the price list, you can more quickly figure out maybe which products you are looking for if you don't know the model number yourself. So the first thing that happens here with our switches is all of them start with a 2 or 3 letter prefix. And that tells you basically what sort of speed functionality is in those switches. So any switch that starts with ES is a 10100 switch. Anything that starts with GS, it means it's a gigabit switch. An XS switch is going to be a switch where all of the ports are multi-gig. An XGS switch is one where most of the ports are 1 gig, and then generally there's going to be 10 gig uplinks or multi-gig uplinks on that switch. There's also an MGS series. We don't normally sell these here in North America. Those are our switches that are aimed at the MSPs, or excuse me, not MSPs, ISPs. Those are called metro switches. You will also see many of our switch model numbers end with a couple letters. So if it ends with F, it's telling you that all of the ports on that switch are fiber ports. So if you're looking for a fiber switch, look for switches that end in the letter F. When it comes to PoE, you will see P or HP. P is going to be mostly our legacy devices. Those were the original 15.4 watt PoE standard that was out there. Just about everything we offer today is going to be HP, which supports either PoE plus, 30 watts of power per port, or PoE plus plus, 60 watts of power per port. This is just showing you here, if you're looking for 1 gig connections, you're looking for fiber connections. SFP gives you support for up to 1 gig. SFP plus gives you support to up to 10 gigs of speed on those fiber uplink ports. We do have certain specific models of switches that can be linked together for direct stacking using a direct attached cable. Most of our switches, however, do not have that. However, through something like Nebula, we can virtually stack the switches. So instead of having a true dedicated stacking port, you are able to go manage ports across multiple switches at the same time using Nebula very easily. So again, when it comes to PoE, there is the standard PoE 802.3 AF, which provides 15.4 watts of power per port. 802.3 AT, which is what most of our switches are, provides up to 30 watts of power per port. And then the new standard is 802.3 BT, also known as PoE++, which provides 60 watts of power per port. So when you look now at the model numbers on those switches, we talked about the prefix and suffix letters here. The next thing you're going to see is this series of products. So we've sort of grouped them together here, but as a general rule, as the number increases in size, the more features there are there for you. So if you're looking for an unmanaged switch, that's our 100 series, 1000 series, 1100 series, and 1300 series. Those are all going to be unmanaged switches. If you're looking for web management and just, sort of your core basic functionality, you're looking at our 1200 and 1900 series switches. So the 1200 series, they're going to have less functionality than, say, the 1900 series. So it just depends what you're looking for there. The 1200 series is primarily desktop based, where the 1900 series includes a number of rack mount switches for you. And then probably the area where we sell the most here is our 1920 and 1930 series switches. So these are web managed switches that support basically full layer 2 functionality here. And then on the high end side of things, these are our layer 3 light switches, layer 3 switches, et cetera. So that's our 2210, 2220, 3738, and 4600 series. If you're looking for Nebula management, you're looking at the 1350s, the 1920s, 1930s, 2220s, 3800s. So we'll just quickly go through some of the different models here in these different families. So this is our 1200 series. This is the very most basic web managed switches that we have that just provide, some basic QoS and basic VLAN functionality. They're all desktop based. So we do have both your standard 1 gig port switches, but we also do have some multi-gig switches here, which have 10 gig uplinks and 2.5 gig uplinks for you. Step up from there is the 1900 series. As you can see, most of these are going to be rack mounted, and they've got a little bit more functionality in the management than what you can do on, say, the 1200 series. Then we've got our 1920 series. Like I said, this is probably our best-selling series right here for gigabit switches, heavy-duty rack-mounted, good PoE power budgets on there for you. And then the step up from that is the 1930s, and the 1930s are basically where we're getting up into multi-gig or 10 gig uplinks. In the case of the XGS, or in the case of the XS30s, everything is multi-gig. And then the 2220 series, this is our probably best-selling, traditional switch. These provide command line interface. So if you're one of those guys that likes the command line, likes making scripts, you're looking at our 2200 series for you. These are also web manageable. They come with Nebula Flex Pro out of the box, etc. Then we won't talk about some of the high-end stuff. If you're looking for layer 3, you can talk to your salesperson. They can help figure out which specific models you might be looking at. One of the cool things here we do with PoE is we have this intelligent PoE management. So the way standard PoE works is basically a device identifies itself by class, and based on that class, Switch is supposed to reserve that amount of power for the device. The problem that we run into here is these classes are spaced out too far apart, and there's too big of jumps between the spaces. So a class 3 device requires 15.4 watts of power be reserved for it. A class 4 device requires 30 watts of power. So it's doubling the power that has to be reserved. But in the real world, oftentimes, you're only a watt or two above the previous limit as to what you need. So here's an example here. We've got an IP phone. The IP phone actually only needs 9 watts of power. So if you were to hook 24 of these into your standard switch, it would require a PoE budget of 370 watts to power all 24 of these IP phones. However, with our intelligent PoE monitoring, we can realize that these devices only need 9 watts of power. So therefore, you only need a PoE budget on your switch of 216 watts. So that way you can put more devices into the same PoE power budget, or you can buy the cheaper switches with lower power budget to begin with, depending on what your application is. Here's another example. This is using a pan tilt zoom security camera. Again, by class, it requires 30 watts of power, but realistically, it only needs 16. So if you were plugging 20 of these devices in, you would need 600 watts of power if you're using the classification method. Since our switches support this consumption mode, you in reality only need 320 watts of PoE budget on your switches to power 20 of these devices. And then going from there, we're going to take a little step back and we're going to talk about the 1350 series of switches. The reason we're pulling them out here separately is because they are a little bit of a different animal than our normal switches. These are switches that were originally designed specifically for those of you that are deploying IP cameras in security applications. So these are switches purpose-built for this, but some of the cool features that we have in these for these IP security cameras may also be features that you are interested in for non-IP camera applications. So let's go through some of these. So the first one is, traditionally, you can provide data and PoE up to 100 meters, right, in Ethernet. Well, our 1350 series of switches have the ability to provide data and power up to 250 meters, right? So more than double the run length and still being able to maintain data and provide PoE power. It works with any PoE device. It doesn't require anything special on the PoE device side of things. It's all handled by the switch. Now, the trade-off, and in order to make this work, is we drop the data rate down to 10 megabits per second. But for a lot of applications, 10 megabits per second is going to be enough, rather than having to, put boosters or additional switches in between your drop and where the end device is. We have the ability on these switches to provide continuous PoE power. So if you're making configuration changes that require the device to reboot or you're updating firmware, your connectivity will go down, but the connected device will still maintain its PoE connection. So the connected device won't need to reboot. It will be able to resume service just as soon as the switch itself starts passing traffic again. We've also got a cool status page that you can go into and you can see what the connected devices are, what their IP address is. You can power cycle them if you need to. You can see what data rate they're connected at, etc. We also have the ability here to do automatic camera recovery, but it can also be used for non-cameras. So for cameras, we support LLDP to monitor the connected device. For non-cameras, we support ping. So you can put in the IP address of the connected device to ping it. You can choose how often to ping the device and how many of those pings have to fail before we will power cycle that device to reboot it automatically for you. And then you can also put in here some details such as how long to wait before resuming the checks to give that device time to fully power up and resume behavior here. These switches also have extra heavy duty surge protection to protect them from damage from static surges and things like that. So that's it for our switches. I'm now moving on to our wireless products. So our wireless access points, and we'll start here just by sort of grouping them together. So our business class access points are going to have a few letters in front of them, and then they'll have either 3 numbers or 4 numbers after them. So for an example, NWA 1123 AC or WAX 510D. Now, we do also have some more of what I'm going to call consumer or prosumer type access points. Those are our 50 and 90 series, and I'm not going to talk about them today. I'm just going to focus here on these true business focused products here for us. So all of them are going to support Nebula. And then those ones that start with the number 5 or 6, such as 510D, 5123, et cetera, those ones are Nebula Flex Pro. So those will work with our controllers, and those ones also come bundled with 1 year of our optional Nebula Pro functionality. All of these switches are designed to be extremely heavy duty, both as far as terms of ruggedness and as far as terms of performance. So we used to do it at trade shows. I don't think we've been doing it lately. I think we kind of stopped doing it when COVID came around. But we used to bring our access points at our booth, and we used to have other vendors' access points there. We used to have Ruckus, Ubiquity, I'm not sure who else we'd have, and we would open them up. Then one of the things you would do is you would grab our access point, you would grab any of our competitors, and you would notice that our access point physically weighed more. So why is that? And that's because we're trying to extend the life of those access points. So even our cheap sub $100 access points in the business class here come with lifetime warranties, where somebody like Ubiquity comes generally with 1 at that price point. And that's why, it's because we've built these to last a lot longer. So one of the things you will notice here is the housing itself is going to have a bunch of air holes on there for heat to escape. And then you will see a large metal heat shield that goes behind the PCBA, drawing heat off the board and venting it out. Why? Because when we're dealing with solid state components like this, that's the major cause of failure, is heat fatigue. It can cause those little micro switches in the chips to fail. It can cause solder joints to fail. So by keeping the operating temperature inside the housing cool, it prolongs the life of the device. The other thing we do is we only use solid state capacitors. We don't use electrolytic capacitors. So you don't have to worry about them drying out or leaking or boiling over. Again, to help prolong the life of the product. The other thing you will see here, if you look at us and you look at some of our competition, is we have a lot more shielding going on the PCBA. Generally, most of our competition, even the really expensive ones, just has shielding around a few of the chips. We do a lot more. So this is designed not only to help with EMI issues, but it's been designed to help us filter out 4G and 5G interference. This isn't something that's really an issue in smaller office buildings and smaller deployments. But if you're in a bigger office building where you're using a DAS system to bring in cellular from outside and rebroadcast it inside, 4G and 5G can cause interference with Wi-Fi. So this extra shielding helps protect us from it. The other thing you will notice is we don't put our antennas onto the same PCBA as our chips. Instead, we have them on their own mini board that's got a little reflective isolator behind it to create separation between the antennas and what's going on in the PCBA. Where, again, even our very expensive competition generally doesn't do this. And so it doesn't make much difference for good, strong connections, but it makes a lot of difference for those edge cases, those users that are right on the border between where they should connect or not. And it makes a big difference between, an unreliable connection and a slow but reliable connection for those edge users who just don't have the signal strength or they're just too far away from that access point. So another technology we have here that you probably won't find in most of our competition is called dual optimized antennas. So traditionally, your access points have one set of antennas that are optimized with the idea that the access point is going to be mounted on a ceiling directly above the area that needs to be covered. Unfortunately, out in the real world, sometimes you've got to mount these access points on the wall. You can't mount them on the ceiling for various reasons. And so when you do that, the antenna is no longer optimized for where you've deployed it. So you don't get the coverage that you want on the floor that you're on, and you can cause interference as you send a lot of signal up into the ceiling or down into the floor. So some of our access points, generally our 5 and 6 series, are going to have dual optimized antennas. So they've got two sets of antennas, one that's optimized for ceiling, one that's optimized for wall. So then you can choose when you've deployed these APs, which set of antennas to use based on where you've actually installed that particular access point. The other technology we have is smart antenna. So if you're familiar with Ruckus and their beamflex, it's a very similar technology to our smart antenna. So our smart antenna technology is going to do a little bit different than other access points. So again, other access points, traditionally, you've got a single set of antennas that provide coverage that's optimized for ceiling mount deployment. And that antenna pattern doesn't change based on the environment. So you can run into issues with interference. In this case, we're showing a microwave, but it could just be other Wi-Fi devices that are nearby, other access points. We've got a limited number of channels that you can use. And as we increase speed and increase bandwidth, to get that increased speed, we're reducing the number of non-interfering channels that can be used. So our smart antenna technology has the ability to use hundreds of different antenna patterns and choose different antenna patterns for different clients. So traditionally, the way this would work is you would optimize the antenna pattern based on where the device is in relationship to the access point. Our algorithm that we use, which is a little bit different than some of the other vendors that claim smart antenna, is we optimize based not only on where the client is, but we sort of scan for where other sources of interference are and choose antenna patterns that will ignore those other sources of interference. And so because of that, you get a lot better performance in environments where there's, say, a lot of users, a lot of access points. Both of those environments, smart antenna makes a huge difference in the quality of performance on that network. So you can see here, we did some of our own comparison testing. This is us versus Aruba's AP515 compared to our WAX650S. Both are Wi-Fi 6 4x4 5 gigahertz devices. And as you can see, smart antenna makes a big difference there as far as the performance between the two, even though we've got very similar specs other than the smart antenna. Now, a few years back, it's been a while, but the same technology is being used today. A group in Italy at the University of Brescia, their networking group saw the claims companies like us and Ruckus make in regards to smart antenna technology, and they decided to put it to a test. They tested us, Ruckus, and then non-smart antenna vendors, Cisco, and Aruba, and decided to compare the performance. Now, there's a link down there on the bottom left, and that's where you can go and you can find the entirety details of the investigation this group's report did, or this group did at the university there. But the main takeaways here is smart antenna dramatically outperforms non-smart antenna access points when you're in environments that have what's called co-channel interference, basically multiple devices operating on the same channel. Up to 50%, 6% better than Cisco. And even when you compare smart antenna against smart antenna, our smart antenna in these co-channel interference environments had up to a 45% benefit over Ruckus's smart antenna implementation. If you just Google Zyxel smart antenna white paper, we've put together a white paper on that, and we've also got links online to the full thing if you want to read everything that was done. I want to talk really briefly here about Wi-Fi 6 because it's still a relatively new technology. We still have a lot of you out there that are still buying our 11AC products. So what is Wi-Fi 6? So Wi-Fi 6 is not just a way of going a little bit faster, which is traditionally what we've been, right? As we went from B to G to N to AC, primary focus has been on making the network faster. Unfortunately, Wi-Fi itself has been around since the late 90s, and there really hasn't been any core functionality change to it. So this is something that Wi-Fi 6 did. Wi-Fi 6 sort of, they took a look at all these issues that have been plaguing Wi-Fi because of the legacy technology that's been out there and decided to really make some changes to address some of these issues in addition to just faster speeds. So we'll go through a little bit of it here for you, but it is really a big step up for us. So one thing is, in theory, you can get up to 10 gigabits of throughput with Wi-Fi 6 with the right equipment. It's designed for larger capacity, meaning more users on the same access point before you start running into interference issues, but also it's been designed to help minimize interference between access points. So a lot of really good stuff there to help you in those dense environments. And this Wi-Fi 6 technology goes about this. It's very similar to our smart antenna in the goal, reducing this interference, but it does it in a different way. So therefore, Wi-Fi 6 is complementary to our smart antenna technology. So they pair together really well. The other cool thing here with Wi-Fi 6 is it affects both your 2.4 and your 5 gigahertz radio. 11AC or Wi-Fi 5 was only on your 5 gigahertz radio. So if you're using an 11AC product, if you're connecting to 2.4 gigahertz, you're still connecting using Wi-Fi 4 or 11N technology. 11AC didn't make any changes. Now with Wi-Fi 6, your 2.4 has a major upgrade as far as performance goes. So there are some different technologies out there that make this possible. Some of them here are upstream and downstream MIMO. So the ability for multiple, traditionally with 11AC, your AP could broadcast to multiple client devices, but your client devices had to take turns responding. With this upstream MIMO now, your client devices can simultaneously transmit back to the AP without interfering with each other. We added support in both upstream and downstream for OFDMA, allowing us to more accurately carve up the available spectrum into smaller chunks and assign those more efficiently to your different devices based on their capabilities. We give you resource unit scheduling, the ability to schedule when different devices broadcast instead of it being a free-for-all. Higher encoding so we can fit more data into the same amount of bandwidth. This cool stuff called BSS coloring, which basically allows us to identify which device the data is for. So you can sort of, other devices can ignore data that's not intended for them. Targeted wake up time for your smart devices that are your battery oriented devices to help optimize antenna or longevity of their batteries. Now, unfortunately, all of these features are not required to call your device Wi-Fi 6. And in fact, a lot of your early devices and some of your lower end devices that are calling themselves Wi-Fi 6 are missing some of these key features. So when it comes to Zyxel products, all of our true business class APs, those 3 and 4 digit numbered APs, all of them support all of the key functionality here in Wi-Fi 6. And unfortunately, when you're shopping out there, it's not always easy to tell which Wi-Fi 6 AP supports all the features. So at least for us, again, our Pro APs support all of these features. Something else to also keep in mind out there when you're comparison shopping is some of the devices, some devices that are calling themselves Wi-Fi 6 in order to save data or save price are only offering Wi-Fi 6 functionality on one of the radios. They don't offer it on both radios. An example of this would be Ubiquity's lower end Wi-Fi 6 AP. I think it's the U6 Lite. I could be wrong on the model number, but it only offers Wi-Fi 6 on the 5 gigahertz radio. And again, you wouldn't really know that by looking at it because there's nowhere, where they call it out. Hey, by the way, it's only on one radio. So something to keep in mind. Again, for our APs, all of our Wi-Fi 6 products provide Wi-Fi 6 on both radios. Going on here, I do want to talk about controller functionality. So most of you out there are using Nebula to manage your access points, but for those of you that don't want to use the cloud for whatever reason, again, our security gateways also provide a built-in controller. And for the most part, the functionality is very similar between Nebula Cloud Management and an on-premise controller. Both Nebula Cloud and the on-premise controller do zero AP configuration, meaning you don't have to configure anything on the AP to manage it in the cloud, or in this case, to manage it with a local area controller. You simply add it into your controller and the AP will automatically flip itself over into managed mode for you. But all the other features are similar. Mesh functionality is there, fast roaming functionality, intelligent channel selection, dynamic VLANs, load balancing, et cetera, are the same across them all. The only feature that's exclusive to the controller that you can't do in the Nebula Cloud is rogue AP detection. So if you want to do rogue AP detection, you do need to use the APs with a local controller. And this is just showing here's the different models of our VPN, USG Flex, and ATP series, and showing you here by default out of the box how many APs they can manage. And then over here is how many APs they can manage with one-time license upgrade. So you can upgrade. So for instance, here, the VPN 50, out of the box, you can manage 4 access points, but you can buy licenses to unlock management up to 36 devices. If you're looking to, manage a lot of APs, the VPN 1000s can have up to 1,032 APs unlocked for you for management support. And that, people, that ends today's webinar. Like I said, it was just supposed to be sort of a high-level overview, get you familiar with some of our products. If you have some questions, send them in using that question and answer interface there in Zoom for you. Now, I just wanted to draw your attention here. If you go to YouTube and search Zyxel, there's a bunch of different Zyxels out there because we're a global company. So for the US, what you're looking for is Zyxel America channel. That is the US-based YouTube channel. And most of our webinars are recorded and uploaded to that YouTube. So if there's something you're interested more in, go check out our YouTube. There's a good chance we've already done a webinar or put together some sort of training video that you can find on YouTube. Or if there was a webinar you wanted to attend, but you couldn't for some reason, you will find them there on there. We also have up there video case studies, commercials, all sorts of cool stuff for you on our channel. And then always you can connect to us on LinkedIn, where we are Zyxel US channel. I still don't have any questions that have come in. So just also to point out for you here, we do have a user forum. You can simply go to forum.zyxel.com. And that's a place where you can talk to your fellow Zyxel users and installers. In addition to that, though, it's kind of different from some of the other user forums out there, is these forums are monitored by our product management teams and our R&D teams. So you will occasionally see them answering and responding to questions that you have. But just in general, it's a good idea if you've got some suggestions, things you'd like to see us do differently. We are monitoring that. So if you see a lot of people saying, yeah, we need that, or yeah, it should be done that way, it will definitely give it a much more likelihood that we will implement that for you. It's also a great place to go for the latest release notes, security bulletins, things like that. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions, so I'm going to go ahead and end today's webinar. Thank you for joining us. We do webinars most Tuesdays and Thursdays. Tuesdays are our more in-depth, specific, how do you configure this for VoIP? How do you do that in our product, et cetera? Where Thursdays are more of our general overview, what does the sales team guys need to know to sell this product type of presentations. So hopefully I'll see you there in a few of those. Thank you.